Expat warning. I'm sounding the alarm again. This flew across my desk this morning. Listen, the European Union just retaliated against the US with 93 billion euro tariffs to hit America. Yes, you heard that right. This is an urgent expat warning. A major trade war is now officially brewing on both sides of the Atlantic, not just America anymore. The EU, compiled of about 27 countries, have hit back at the States. They just announced it. I'm getting this fresh from Moo, our investment broker's website, okay? This is coming in fresh. This is gonna be one of the first channels that you hear covering this story. I'm gonna need you to hit that like button on the way in. Share this with 10 people because this is a global trade war that's not one-sided anymore. The EU has announced 93 billion euros. Let's talk about how this is going to impact you in America, how this impacts you as an expat, how this impacts those of us who are also in Africa, Europe, Asia, and everywhere else across the globe. In a stunning escalation, the EU has announced their retaliatory tariffs against US goods, signaling the breakdown of critical trade negotiations with the Trump administration. If you're a small business owner abroad, if you're an expat, even if you're in America and you do business with other nations, you want to heed this warning. So let's talk about what just happened. On July 24th, 2025, Moo and several other European finance outlets confirmed that these EU nations overwhelmingly approved of tariffs targeting 93 billion US dollars in American exports. The move was framed as retaliation unless Washington agrees to lower Trump's new 30% blanket tariffs that he's giving to the EU imports back down to 15. So they want the tariffs to move from that 30% that Trump announced just recently. We've been talking on this channel, Journey With Us Finances. We have been talking about and following these tariffs since they were first implemented, okay? And at first he was like, hey, it's gonna be a flat rate 15%, then he bounced it up to 30%. That triggered the EU. The EU did not like that. They were like, you know what, we don't have to take this from you anymore. We know we're cousins. We know we have great history together. We know all that, but this is ridiculous. They don't want that 30%. Now listen, who does this affect? When the EU puts those tariffs on America, it's going to affect European citizens who are getting American goods. So there's going to be less American goods that are sold in the EU. For those of you in America, the tariffs that Trump has put on the EU, when you get European goods, you intake that cost, that additional 30% or whatever percentage it is or what it could escalate to. Understand that. This literally means that everything from US vehicles to electronic vehicles, software licenses, guys, financial products, and even agricultural goods are now in the EU's crosshairs. That's not a symbolic slap either. It's economic warfare. Now you're thinking, why is all of this happening right now? It's July, we're halfway through the year, everything was somewhat peaceful because the Israel-Iran conflict had kind of simmered down and America had stopped their strikes. But look, nothing is simmering down. Things are picking back up. This is going to be huge because earlier this year, remember, Trump's administration imposed aggressive unilateral tariffs on several European sectors, citing unfair trade balances. Trade negotiations stalled in July, with Washington refusing to back down from its proposed 30% levy. In response, the EU fast-tracked countermeasure packages worth 93 billion euros, threatening to impose it immediately if no resolution is reached. And we know with the Trump administration, America's not going to back down. I'm just going to tell you that. If people don't really know how America is right now, they're not going to back down. Just FYI for all y'all out there that are like, well, maybe it'll come. No, they're not going to back down. They're going to keep that 30%, okay? According to internal EU sources cited in Handelsblatt and Les Echos, these retaliatory tariffs could be activated as soon as September 1st, 2025, affecting over 120 categories of goods. Woo, that's a lot, isn't it? Again, share this with 5 people. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you are just now hearing this information. Now, what we really care about, what does this mean for expats, okay? If you're new here, you're watching Journey with us. We are an expat family who has been abroad for over 5 years now, traveling southeastern Africa. We are currently living on the island of Mauritius. It's a small island off the coast of Madagascar on the continent of Africa, or just off the coast of the continent of Africa. Now listen, if you are an expat living abroad, relying on cross-border trade, then you need to understand this is not just a headline. This is your entire life. Here's what's coming. First, we're going to see rising prices on U.S. goods in Europe. There's a lot of digital nomads and expats recently that moved from America to Europe, okay? Understand, prices are going to increase. Expect an immediate increase in the price of American products sold in the EU, like laptops, right? Hello, Apple. Phones, tech, imported medications, supplements, auto parts like Ford, hello, agricultural products, and even educational software. We know America really just dominates when we think of like the software industry, okay? And if you are a digital nomad who relies on American tech or shipping, your costs are going to spike drastically. This is why we always tell you on this channel, you want to be somewhere with a 60% lower cost of living in these times, okay? My preference, our preference on this channel, as you can probably tell by our logo, is Africa, more specifically sub-Saharan Africa, because you get a 60% lower cost of living in most of these countries down here. Now, these slowdowns are going to happen in US-based payments abroad as well. Listen to this part. If you are contracting with US-based firms while abroad, you could see longer payment delays or halted work orders. Why? Because importers and financial institutions may start de-risking American supply chains. Now, let's talk about cross-borders, visa, residences, all those processes, because this also means weaker diplomatic ties. This means that when you go to Europe from America, if you're going to Spain, France, Portugal, all these nations are a part of the EU. I have to look up some other ones. I have to pull some more of them up, okay? Those are just the ones off the top of my head. But if you go to some of these nations in the EU as an American, they may be low-key giving you the side eye. Okay, you may kind of get that look like the Americans, they're tripping over there, they're a little wild, okay? And this is like, we're really talking about on this channel, the collapse of the US, the fall of the US. And you have to think, what we're seeing right now on an international stage is that nations that historically used to benefit from the US or were supportive of the US are coming together and saying, no, no thanks. Remember, we discussed Mexico on this channel. Mexico is closing their borders to American citizens. They are rioting. And then Trump basically said that he's gonna, I don't know when he's going to do it, but he had announced, and usually when he announces something, he'll do it in a couple of weeks or a month. He had announced that he's gonna stop flights, both passengers and cargo, to Mexico because of the trade war, okay? So we're seeing how these things with the trade war can quickly result in an urgent crisis if you are in some of these countries like Mexico, like the EU, for example. So you could be seeing visa delays, banking restrictions, and delays in currency transfers, okay? And then of course we have the small business shock. If you sell goods abroad on Amazon, Etsy, Shopify, or run a global services firm, tariffs can potentially wipe out your margins overnight. Again, this is where it's so helpful to be in an economy that's 60% lower than America's currency and economy, okay? This is where you're gonna have a little bit of leverage in this global trade war because it is a global trade war, okay? And this is especially true for US expats in countries like Germany, France, Portugal, or the Netherlands, where American digital products are deeply embedded in daily business. So what's really the bigger picture here? America is slowly being surrounded. This literally comes just days after China was reported to have dumped 43%. Yes, you heard that right, sounding the alarm. 43% of its U.S. Treasury bonds, signaling a broad rejection of U.S. financial dominance. Now the EU is joining in with economic force, positioning itself to strengthen internal EU supply chains, You can't be mad at them for that. Forged closer trade ties with BRICS and ASEAN nations, ASEAN nations. So it's basically like the BRICS of the Asia continent, okay? Where they're having Asia trade ties, diplomatics over there. They're really honing in on their networking strategy among those nations, and reduced exposure to U.S. unpredictability. Again, this is not just about tariffs, okay? It's about de-dollarization, sovereignty, and survival in a multipolar economic world. And I do not want you to get caught off guard, but also listen to this. While all of this was happening back in June, remember the Israel-Iran-US conflict that was happening in June, while that was happening, China silently behind the scenes, I'm telling you, these guys, they are dumping the US. Not only did they dump 43% of their US tariff treasury bonds in the last couple of months and in the last couple of years, but on top of that, China met with 53 out of 54 African nations to form a trade alliance. President Donald Trump of the American administration, the Trump administration, was only able to meet with like 4 to 5 African countries. Meanwhile, China met with basically 97% of the continent to have trade relations. When I'm telling you that these countries outside of America do not depend on America, when I'm telling you that EU does not care about America anymore, when I'm telling you, I'm begging you to see that America is collapsing. And it's not even happening that slowly. It's just 2025, and we can document all of these things that are happening in a span of just a couple of months. Hit the like button, leave a comment down below if you see the writing on the wall. Whew. Now, if you're like, sis, I get you. I see what you're talking about. I see eye to eye. Now listen, here's what I want you to do. I want you to diversify your currency exposure. I want you to use multi-currency accounts like N26 and Revolt. And then I want you to source alternatives to US imports, especially electronics, medical, and food products. Then you need to avoid relying on US vendors or payment apps for critical infrastructure in your business. Watch for embassy closures and border activity, especially if you are in a trade-heavy region. And then consider switching your invoicing currency to euros or pound if you're in the EU. And to be honest, prophetically speaking, this was inevitable. For years, the world has signaled its exhaustion with U.S. unpredictability, from using the dollar as a weapon to digital surveillance laws to America's heavy-handed approach. Listen, America's whole entire strategy is backfiring in its face. What you're seeing is not just a trade dispute, it's the collapse of American exceptionalism in real time. Whew. Now, let me list my sources. They're going to be down in the description. Mumu's investor report from July 24th. I'm going to butcher this name. I'm going to butcher this publication. I'm sorry. Handelsblatt EU trade report, July 24th as well. European Council press briefing. Wall Street Journal, Trump's tariff gambit risk global blowback. And Reuters EU and US near trade breakdown over metal, auto, and AG tariffs. If you want to stay ahead, check out the link in the description. I have Stay at the Diaspora. I have Educators Amplified. I have the Introvert Marketer playlist. There's so much content on this channel. Subscribe to members only because you can get behind the scenes look at our life in Mauritius, Africa, how my husband trades crypto, Forex, and teaches our clients how to do the same. There's so much good resources. We have so many good resources on this channel for you to use, so you can basically shop the library down below and see what resonates and what you need most right now. And listen, things are never going back to the way they used to be, so you might as well pray for strength, get a little dignity, get a little more peace, and just put your backpack on and get ready, because this is going to be a bumpy ride. Shalom, shalom. I'll see you in the next video.